Okay, well, welcome back to our sculpting tutorial. What we're going to do now is have a look at this beautiful head. We're going to try and sculpt it nice and quickly. Again, like the body, we're just doing broad brush strokes. Here I've got a couple of basic sort of reference images. And the Lord of the Rings has a lot to answer for when it comes to trolls. This is an interesting image here. I do intend to put, I think I'll put a helmet or a cap, skull cap kind of on the troll. You have to sort of, you should plan these models quite as best you can. There's no point in me sculpting an awful lot of detail on the top part of the head if ultimately I'm going to cover it all. So yeah, good design decisions help you not waste time. I'm sure you've all seen this amazing film, which is Warcraft. Well, it's not so amazing, it's a terrible movie, but it's great animation in it. And this guy here is, so he's interesting in terms of the shape of his head, sort of a very wide kind of jaw, extended jaw because of the tusks, and the large forehead, kind of Neanderthal kind of look. And again, this is a bit more kind of orky and humanoid. So this is obviously a human-based character that's been augmented as opposed to something that's completely different. So we're probably a bit closer than this, or closer to this sort of kind of look here. Okay, so let's just go and do some sculpting. One of the things to remember is with dynamic topology, when you are sculpting, every time you go in and out of sculpt mode, it turns off. So if I start sculpting now, I'm not adding any geometry, I'm just pushing stuff around. So I need to turn that on and click OK, and now I'm actually sculpting, so I'm adding geometry. So at this very early stage, all I want to do is, flatten it all out and add a bit of geometry. So I have something to push and pull. And we have some sort of basic sort of connection between body and the head. Okay. Now, okay. So we have this sort of not spherical, but we have this sort of thing. And what are we going to do with it? So a troll's face is normally quite flat, so we don't need to move out too much here. It's going to have I'm going to give it tusks, so I'm going to have a sort of an extended jaw. So I'm going to start by adding in a bit of geometry. Keep in mind, by default, this character, or this, we're modeling with the mirror option turned on. So okay. So yeah, anything I sculpt on one side will be added to the other. So added a bit of volume there. It's going to very crudely sort of draw roughly where I want the mate to be. So roughly in that area there. Okay. About there. And I want the eyes. Trolls, again, like as I said, the Lord of the Rings is a lot to answer for in terms of trolls, but they have quite small eyes, so all I'm doing here is I'm holding down the control key and negatizing the brush, so I'm actually cutting rather than adding geometry. And then we have kind of a basic-ish question, which is how do we want the nose? In this sort of disappeared. In the Lord of the Rings troll, the nasal cavity is actually open, the nose is flat, you can see into the nose. And the other character we look at, the Warcraft kind of orc, had a more humanoid nose. So that's up to us at this stage, or in terms of design. So I'm going to add a slightly more humanoid nose. nose, so I'm not copying Lord of the Rings too much. Now, what I have here, though, I'm not mad about, because if I put my nose here, which is what I'm currently doing, there's no gap between where the nose ends and the mouth starts. So I do want sort of an upper lip area. So I'm going to move the mouth down a little bit, just to, again, let's make the face seem a little more, yeah, it'll make a bit more sense. Now, so this is, again, quite crude at the moment. Give him a bit of a brow, and we're going to pause there for a second. Okay, so not looking good, but that's okay. And the one thing you need when you're sculpting is patience to not judge everything too quickly. So I'm going to jump back out into object mode, and I'm going to click in here into this eye, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. I'm going to rotate it on X by 90 degrees. I should probably turn that on so you can see what I'm doing. I scale it down, and there's eyeball number 1. I'm not interested in its Y or Z value. It's approximately in the right place. Maybe you can move it back just a little bit. I'm going to duplicate it, so Shift D, and then this one I'm going to put a minus in front of that value, and it'll jump directly across. If you remember, we're mirroring across this Z axis here, so plus X minus X. Now, I go back in here, and then just to remind you again, when I go back to sculpt mode, I will not have dynamic topology turned on. I have to re-enable it each time. It's a bit of a pain, but stops us making some crazy mistakes, which we would otherwise make. So it's going to peel back the geometry here for a second, and then I'm going to sort of draw in what we want. Okay. Now, we want our eye to have a kind of lazy-ish eyelid going across top of it. Okay. Save that there. And again, we want to have a lower eyelid. I'm just brushing on several times, lifting my hand off the mouse and brushing again. This is adding, as I've called it before, just adding volume to the mesh. Yeah. Yeah. And the direction that these strokes are in are kind of important, because it's where the geometry is going to kind of flow, and the geometry should flow out from sort of the nose here and around this way. So there should be a kind of a clear path almost all the way down around. You could join it all the way here in the chin if you wanted, but I'm not going to go do that yet. Okay, now we smooth this off a bit. Again, this is just basic sort of shapes, outlines, trying to get things to have a crude but decent appearance. We're going to come back with texture brushes and do a whole load of stuff to this. So what we have here is nowhere near approaching where we'll end up. So add in our nasal cavity. again, this is it's all just design decisions, whether you want to have, like I said, a more humanoid or troll-like sort of look to your character. A bit of volume here in the mouth, and then we'll start working on this lower lip. So I want to add in, I think, as I was saying, I want to add in kind of like a tusk. So I need a bit of volume here to make room, like a platform, not too much. That's not too bad. To make this a bit more realistic. Realistic is definitely the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Make it look like it's that one piece of geometry could actually exist beside the other. Okay, now this is very crude, but it'll do for now. Now, what we're looking to do now, oh yeah, we've a couple of other things to do. We're going to add in a bit more jaw, so this kind of makes sense. The geometry follows itself around. We want to add in an ear. I'm going to add in an ear here. Now it's an orc ear, so we can break all sorts of rules. Again, ears can be really complicated and difficult to model, so we're not going to spend too long trying to do this here. We are going to come back and do this properly. Anon, I think is the phrase. Yeah. So again, this is just about cutting, smoothing, creating shapes that kind of complement and like I said, we'll be coming back shortly with texture brushes and all sorts of things to make this look a bit more interesting and add more interesting detail. So we'll give this guy a big brow, as he is a troll. Something slightly more interesting flowing up his head. Okay. Yeah, I'll give him some stripes. He's not flat there. Now, crazy looking thing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to not lose faith in myself or in my modeling. I'm going to start seeing what we can do with the grab tool. And you'll be surprised what is possible from a starting point. Maybe you've got you've built one thing, and then you can start manipulating it, and you've got something else. So let's pull this back here, give him some kind of jowls. Definitely want to make his face thinner still. I'm trying to be careful not to grab yeah, like that, the body. I'm trying to just manipulate this face here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, using the grab tool, we can do all sorts of interesting things to our model, and you know, bits that weren't working, you know, a little bit of love and care, a little bit of tweaking can be made look far more lifelike. And yeah, okay. So, you know, bits to fix, but that's easy done. So all we're trying to do at this stage is get some whoa, can I do that? Cut in here, spin off, and I like his hooked nose. Okay, so I'm gonna go back out to object mode, and I'm gonna go File, Save As, and Monster Stage 4. We'll save it as that. We can go, you know, use the same sort of tools. So I can go back to my Sculpt tool, and using this grab here, I can, you know, do all sorts of funky things with the. Just gonna do that. It's a really powerful tool. I'd need to, like, these feet are too cylindrical. I need to kind of pull out toes and make him look like he's actually physically capable of standing, which doesn't really look like at the moment. Looks like he'd topple over. Yeah, so, and I need to redefine some of the areas. So there's a very obvious chest area, a very obvious stomach area, etc. And the arms need a lot of work. But we're not going to worry about it too much for now. So, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to back to object mode. I'm going to go File, Save. I'm just going to render out an image to see what we've got. So I'm going to look through my camera, and that's not very good. I'm going to go Lock Camera to View, spin this around and zoom out a bit, and get myself a decent kind of perspective on the character. I'm going to zoom in a bit, select my light, move this around to the front. I'm going to turn on in my viewport here ambient occlusion. So just to show you what that does, it makes quite a whoops, too far. There we go. Quite a big difference. You can see so there's dark areas in here. So ambient occlusion turns things on and off. In terms of brightness and shadows and shade. So this won't be shown in the render, so I need to turn that on. So I'm going to turn on ambient occlusion, set it to say 0.3. I go to my render settings, keeping in mind I'm in Blender Render. This is the resolution the image will be, so we'll set it to 100%, so it's HD, that's full quality. It'll output a PNG file by default, which is a still image. I'm not going to worry too much about where I save it. This object here has a material. It's the default material. Let's call it troll for now, and we will take away how shiny it is and make it a little bit darker. And we'll turn off the matte cap, so that's actually what we've got. And we'll turn on materials so we can see what the light is doing. We'll select, these are our eyes, our lamp, and we'll make this light a little kind of bit, not green, a little bit yellowy. There we go. And yeah, we'll render him out as an image like that, just as a reference. So render. Let me go full screen. So at the moment, that's what we've got. Our troll. So not bad for 21 minutes and 20 minutes in the last one. So 40 minutes, not bad. But yeah, we'll have we'll increase the resolution of the model a little bit more, and we'll start I'll tack it with some texture brushes and paint on skin, like a hide, like we might use sort of a crocodile skin, an elephant skin, sort of to really increase the amount of detail. And we'll obviously get in and make different parts of him a bit more. His head's a little bit big, I think. And anyway, we're going to play around a bit more. So we'll leave it there for now.